Jackson State just pulled in an FBS transfer that could give them a nice 1-2 punch at running back. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, Sam Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make it Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, and Gametime is the only place for your last-minute ticket deals. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. We'll wrap up today's episode with a look at Stillman softball and Talladega baseball because they have very similar paths in their NAIA tournament. Prior to that, we'll be taking a look at the two HBCU coaches thus far that have been announced for the Bill Walsh Diversity Fellowship Program. And we kick off today's episode with a potential 1-2 punch in the Jackson State backfield at running back because they just pulled in Clyde Price to third. And I believe that with his skill set, they could have a very physical 1-2 punch at the running back position. I love Irv Mulligan. I genuinely do. I believe that Irv Mulligan is a player who was an Offensive Player of the Year quality guy in 2023. That's what I saw from him prior to being injured. And who knows, if he would have continued on his path, maybe he would have led the conference in rushing yards. Maybe he would have had that team success in enough of it to be the Offensive Player of the Year. Ladarius Owens, Texas Southern, a guy I've ranted on about why I feel like he should have been the OPOY, but he didn't have that. So you're looking at Irv Mulligan, who is a guy who I really do believe is an Offensive Player of the Year contender in 2024 at your running back position. But then you bring in Clyde Price III. So why am I excited about this? I believe that those two, I don't think compliment is the right word, because usually when I think compliment, it's you have this skill set, I have that skill set. But I do think that they pair really well together, especially if you want to have a physical running game. I think that the two running backs together would bring a lot of physicality to the offense, and I think that would pay off well for them as far as setting the tone. They would have to have the offensive lineman. Be seeing TC Taylor talk about the offensive lineman not necessarily having that nastiness. They didn't necessarily have that physicality. They were big, but they weren't using their size the way that TC would want them to use it. So you got to have that up front settled first. And this is where it gets a little tricky, because I stress the term potential because we haven't seen that much from Clyde Price. We just haven't. He went to Kansas State out of high school, had 2 years there, never seen an offensive snap. It was 2019, 2020, and 2021. I guess he just sat out. He has no stats there. No stats in 2021. So I guess he sat that year out, and then he transferred over to Akron, right? And also, let me just speak on real quick. Let me rewind why I can praise Irv Mulligan at the beginning of a segment about Clyde Price, really, because when you look at what Mulligan does, he's very physical, but he also has really good breakaway speed. I know that he can get you to tough yards, but if I don't have to kind of just keep pounding him into the line of scrimmage repeatedly, I would avoid it. And I think that allowing some of that wear and tear to not be on your running back on a weekly basis, on a 3, 4, 5 times a game basis, it would bode well in each game. You'll be a little bit more fresh. You don't have to worry about, oh man, he's a little bit worn down because he's been trying to get these tough yards all game. That's where I come in with it. So I have a lot of praise and admiration for who Irv Mulligan is as a player. And I think he's a fantastic talent. I would bring this in to even maximize the talent of Irv Mulligan. Like I don't really think a lot or have a lot of expectations of late spring transfer portal guys, but this is the type of situation I'd want to step into that had low expectations. So back to Price, though. Price hasn't played a lot of football since high school. He ain't played nothing in the first 3 years offensively. And in Akron, he didn't even hit 100 carries. He did get to 99, but he didn't quite get to 100. So if you're looking over the course of, and then that was in 2022, he sat out again in 2025. So he's been in high school, or excuse me, in college since 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. He's 5 years removed from high school, and he has 99 carries. I understand how that can be a little bit concerning. And for me, when I'm looking at a player who only really has high school experience, I get a little bit wary. I get a little bit hesitant. I don't get wary because that's on the coaches to be able to scout that talent. But from a media standpoint, from a let's talk about this player, a lot of times I don't feel like there's much to gain from high school when it's 2-3 years away. This time it's 5 years in the past. But I make an exception for Clyde Price III because I seen some things that they said about him in high school. I seen how he was used at Akron, where he had 99 carries, 309 yards 309 yards total. So when I look at how he was spoken about in high school, when I look at how he was used at Akron, where he doesn't have a high yards per carry, I envision a bruiser. This is what was said about Price in high school. Price brings a potent combination of power and strength in a compact form. They also mentioned how he played linebacker, but they didn't just say he played linebacker. They said he was a thumping linebacker. And here's the difference between being a bruiser and being a speedster, specifically in high school transitioning into college. Bruiser is part mentality. To be a thumping linebacker, to be a, now obviously strength and power, that's a athletic trait, but you also have to have the mentality to keep hitting your head against the wall. And when you're a bruiser, I'd say 9 times out of 10, you have that, and it doesn't just go away. Now, maybe it can be beat out of you, but it doesn't just go away. With speed, you can find somebody faster. Yes, you can find somebody tougher, but it's the mentality of knowing somebody could be tougher and still going in there and trying to get the tough yards. I don't want to say absolutely love, but I love the potential of this. All I would ask is that you pair another running back who can catch out of the backfield because neither one of these guys really do it that much. You did get 33 or 31 catches. 31 catches out of Price last year or 2021. I don't know what the whole sit out in 2023 was. He played in 2022, sat out 21, sat out 23. Maybe he just likes even years. Jackson State can take advantage of that in 2024. But speaking of even, let's look at the 2 HBCU coaches who have been announced for the Bill Walsh Diversity Fellowship. That's 2 of what could be many upcoming. We just haven't found out the final number just yet. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. And listen, the Mavericks play on Saturday, right? Maybe I want to go get me some tickets. I think that game is here. Yeah, that game is in Dallas. So I'm not from Dallas, but I'm close enough. But but anyway, the Dallas Mavericks play the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're trying to close it out on Saturday. Maybe I want to go give me some tickets there. I know that the Chicago Sky and the Dallas Wings are playing in the city in Arlington at UTA. Maybe I want to go get some tickets there. You have the zone deals. You have the flash deals. You have everything you could possibly ask for, and you get to actually see your seat before you purchase it. It's a huge win, and no matter how you slice it. And not only that, say you find a better seat or a better price for the seat. That's cool. Go ahead and go back. They'll give you 110% back on the difference if you can find a better price in the same section, the same row. That's how confident they are that you won't be able to do it. So go ahead and take advantage of the flash deals, of the zone deals. Go to Gametime, download the app, and create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE to get $20 off your first purchase. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked on Sports Today. It's the first of its kind 24/7, all day, everyday live sports program on YouTube. So go ahead and go to Locked on Sports today and subscribe. I appreciate y'all rolling, man. I'm going to try to get this fixed. I actually had to send my camera out. So unless I can find a spare, we're going to be rocking with this for about a month. I know. But we're going to go ahead and rock with it till a month. So hopefully I can find some way to get you guys the usual camera quality. But if not, in mid-June, it'll all be different again. So thumbs up and let's hope, cross our fingers. But anyway, we have two HBCU coaches who have been announced for the Bill Walsh Diversity Fellowship. And this is an annual conversation that I don't mind having. Some of them I don't like, right? Like some of these conversations I don't like to have. Because do I enjoy talking about the lack of HBCU players drafted? No, it's disgusting, right? Like it's not a fun conversation. It's one that needs to happen because it is a conversation every year, but I don't want to have it. First of all, I would hope it doesn't exist. And even when it does happen, I really don't care to continue to go too in-depth about it. I think the first time this happened, I had like 3, or actually I wasn't here the year that 0 HBCU players were drafted. Was I? I don't think I was. I mean, no, I wasn't. So I wasn't here that time. So I never had to have that conversation, right? So I was there when 1 got drafted. I was there with 2. But this right here, anyway, to not focus on the negativity, let's focus on the positivity. The Bill Walsh Fellowship is something that I would love to talk about on a yearly basis. And I feel like we have. I feel like each year, the last 3 off seasons that I've been here, I feel like we've spoken about it either with a coach getting picked up or at least spoken about it with the Ravens who went to the Ravens hosting the Bowie State and Morgan State football teams at their practice. And I kind of related it to the Bill Walsh Fellowship, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like we've done that, but this is a constant conversation. I love it because it's all about getting minorities more involved in coaching. The one thing that I think makes this way different than the Rooney Rule is with the Rooney Rule, there's a lot of scams going on. I don't know if you can scam this because essentially the person who is observing the practice, and that's basically what happens. You get brought on through training camp. You get to watch how they move, whatever team you're assigned to. You get to watch how they move. You get to study some of their practices. And like that person can always just take what they want back to their team or back to whoever they are. Now, maybe it's a former player, but who you have to apply for this. So like you have some sort of interest in it. To me, there's a lot less ability to scam because you can always take some away instead of just a fake interview to meet a quota. So that's how I feel about it. And that's one of the reasons that I love it so much. But I don't know what the effectiveness stats are. I don't know how many of the fellowship members have then turned into full-time coaches, or some of them even get picked up after the training camp. Like, you know what? We like you so much. We're just going to bring you on to the team now. We've seen that happen. But, anyway, the point is, this is a great job for diversifying the coaches, or hopes in diversifying the coaches. But that being said, there's 2 prerequisites that you need to qualify. You have to be a former NFL player, or, right, you don't have to check both boxes, but you have to check one of the 2. You have to be a former NFL player or a collegiate coach, high school coach, pro coach, as far as XFL, some sort of experience, right? Let's get into Tory Woodbury from Howard, because it's Howard's Tory Woodbury, and it's also North Carolina Central's Courtney Coard. Woodbury's the interesting one to me because he's literally been an NFL coach before. So I don't know how this works, but he's been an NFL coach before. Why would he need to go through this? That was the one that really got me. He's about to enter his first year at Howard. Prior to that, he was at Morgan State. And he's actually an NFL player, former NFL player too. So he checks both of the boxes. He signed as a UDFA with the New York Jets. He went on to a couple of other teams. I don't know if he really stuck anywhere, but he did a couple of years with the New York Jets. And then that wasn't the extent of his NFL experience. He also became a scout for the Los Angeles Rams. Did that for a few years. And then after scouting, he became a special teams assistant, So he actually got a ring. He got a ring with the Los Angeles Rams. So this one was kind of confusing to me. But hey, you know what? shout out to my boy Gucci. Like, that's how I feel. If Tory Woodbury is going to get the opportunity, let Tory Woodbury get the opportunity. I love that. He's also returning to the state of California. He was with the Rams and as a special teams assistant. And now he's going to be with the Los Angeles Chargers. So he's returning back to LA, not just California, but he's going back to LA with the Los Angeles Chargers. Gosh, I can't talk to that. I really probably need some water, but I don't have any out here, man. Anyway, we gonna persevere. But after this show, just know I'm about to get a big cup of water and I'm about to down it. I ain't even gonna lie to you. I'm about to down this cup of water. That being said, now let's get to Courtney Coard. Courtney Coard announced his acceptance about a week ago. You had Woodberry who announced his yesterday morning, right? Like today morning as I'm speaking. But Coard is well-versed in HBCU defensive lines. And I think that's beautiful because he's going to the Houston Texans. Grambling, high-level defensive lines while he was there. North Carolina A&T, high-level defensive lines while he was there. He was a player at North Carolina Central and an all-conference player prior to coming back to his alma mater to coach just a couple of years ago. He knows about HBCU defensive lines, and that's pretty much all he knows on the collegiate level outside of a year as a grad assistant over there at the University of Georgia. But he has a lot of experience in defensive line specifically. So now he's going to the Houston Texans, and the Houston Texans had a really good defensive line last year. I thought that they did a good job with Will Anderson, and I understand that sometimes when you have a high-level pick, I think he was a number 3 pick in the draft, if I'm not mistaken. When you have somebody like that, oh, well, he's already good. He went to Bama. But no, you have to develop these players, And I thought they did a good job developing him in year one. Their defensive line coach is actually gone. They have their last year's assistant defensive line coach, and he's going to be the current defensive line coach. And I think that he worked at San Francisco. I think he did, right? But you got D'Amico Ryans. Even just from a defensive mind standpoint, D'Amico Ryans had really good defenses at San Francisco. And I think he did a good job with that defense in Houston last year. Now, I know I mentioned Will Anderson. They just brought on Daniil Hunter. He's a vet, so the coaches will probably be less hands-on. So if you're trying to pick the brain of a coach to see how he handles things, this one probably won't be the one to view, but Will Anderson will probably be more hands-on. And even last year, Jonathan Greenard, he had his career high. He had double-digit sacks for the first time. The process of developing defensive line is something that I feel like this current regime, even though it's only been a year, only been a year, I think the current regime with the Houston Texans has done a good job of developing 2 defensive linemen to having successful years. Will Anderson as a rookie, and then Jonathan Greenard as a, I think, 4th-year player having the best year of his career. This was a nice landing spot for somebody who specializes in defensive line. So whether that's Woodberry going back to his NFL roots of sorts, I guess, coaching roots in LA, or if this is Courtney Coard going to defensive line special defensive line developers in Houston, I think that these are good pairings for these two guys. But the decision process isn't over until June 14th. So you still have about a month, a little bit less than a month, for you to see who's going to be all decided. And we will update as it goes on. But let's push forward and look at Stillman and Talladega because they share similar paths in the NAIA tournament despite playing softball and baseball. Let's look at the similarities and differences, a little bit of a Venn diagram as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Let's see what's going on out there at Minnesota right now. Last time I checked, it was a nice little lead. It's halftime, and the Timberwolves are winning by 24 points. If they can hold on, we will have a Game 7 on Sunday, and you can put some money on that. The Knicks and Pacers play today. You can put some money down on that. Tyrese Halliburton threes, Jalen Brunson points. You're looking at Luka in the closeout game on Saturday. Luka Doncic points. Kyrie Irving assists. It's win or go home now. You can do it in the NHL, the NBA, the MLB isn't win or go home, but you can put some money down on there too. It's all on you and what you decide to do. So go to FanDuel.com/locked-on. Now, if you're new to FanDuel, put down a $5 winning bet and you will get $150 back in bonus bets. So go to FanDuel.com/locked-on to make every moment more. That's wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. I want to get into Stillman College, and I want to get into Talladega College because they both share similar paths. Talladega went into the baseball NAIA tournament, and then you have Stillman who went into the softball NAIA tournament. But they both entered their respective tournaments as a very low seed. Stillman was 4. Talladega was 5, but respectfully, 4 and 5 play each other in the first game, no matter what. So it's basically the same thing, right? That's how I look at it. You basically have the same starting point. You both win. Then in the next game, you both have to play the number 1 seed in the tournament. For Talladega, that was LSU Shreveport, and then for Stillman, that was Jessup, which is in California. That's the difference. That's where it all breaks apart. So they both win their first game. Excuse me. They both win their first game and have to play the number 1 seed. And from there, Stillman loses, Talladega wins. Cool. Talladega then has to play Indiana Southeast, which is what they did the first game. That's who they beat the first game. They knock off Indiana Southeast. Now they're in the game to make it to the championship. Unfortunately, they lose there. Also, shout out to Stillman. Shout out to Stillman College, because with that victory over Indiana Southeast the second go-round, they have now set the record in school history for most wins in a season. I think this should solidify them as the best season in Stillman College history. As far as softball goes, you have the most victories. You have the first ever NAIA tournament win in that school's history, also in all of HBCU softball. So you set a record, is a literal record season on 2 different fronts, and you won multiple games in the tournament. I think that you didn't achieve everything you wanted to, obviously, but a win against Indiana Southeast, the second go round, to me, really did solidify this as the best season in Stillman College softball history. So anyway, now let's get into Talladega. And with Talladega, you won against LSU Southeast. You knock off the number 1 seed, but then you lose in the next game. So once you lose in the next game, guess who you got to play against? LSU Southeast, or LSU Shreveport. Excuse me. That's what it is. LSU Shreveport. And unfortunately, you lose this time. So there's some similarities, but there's also some differences. So one of the similarities is basically, hey, we started in the same place. We faced the same type of opponents. We both had to play a team 2 times. It was just, and we both fell the game before the tournament championships. And we lost to the 2 teams who were going to be in there fighting it out for supremacy. All of those things, to me, are big similarities, even though the steps along the way are some drastic differences. But so it's not the exact same path, but that's why we use the word similar. Similar is for things that are alike, but not identical. So we say similar. There we go. I'm giving a little bit of a dictionary lesson. So anyway, I appreciate y'all for listening to me giving dictionary, giving analysis, giving facts and history, all of these things that I'm giving out to you guys. So thank you sincerely. I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Until next time that we hear each other, family, on next week, we will be looking at why Jackson State stood no chance in keeping Tamika Reed. The contract was just too much. The funds, it just wasn't going to happen. And that'll be on next week's episode. But in the meantime, in between time, until next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.
You are Locked On HBCU.
Not that one.